So welcome everyone to Healing Harm. This is our Transformative Justice series where we come together and speak with other professionals that are doing work within the transformative justice realm. And we're so excited today to have Alex Anderson on our show. He is the executive director of Ritual4Return. And I'm going to read your whole bio and your personal statement now as well, Alex. Alexander Anderson experienced a moment of clarity during his incarceration. In 1981, he decided that to improve himself, he needed to better his education. Alex obtained a high school diploma and later a BA degree from Syracuse University while incarcerated at Auburn Correctional Facility, a New York State prison. After his release, he decided that the best way to make restitution was by living a productive life and assisting others. He obtained a master's degree in social work from the Silberman School.
It's Hunter College.
Oh, at Hunter College. Okay, great. And then correct me if a CASAC certificate?
No, a LMSW, licensed social worker, and a CASAC certificate in recovery and in substance abuse.
And
right, it's okay. Social work and substance abuse.
And then later you got a restorative justice certificate.
Right, later I got involved with restorative justice.
And then in 2009, you joined Ritual4Return as a participant to heal from the trauma and stigma you experienced before, during, and after incarceration. Later, you became the executive director to help create a safe and creative space for anyone seeking a transformative life from incarceration. So everyone, welcome, Alex. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad for having me.
Yeah. And as always, we're going to start with a mindfulness practice, and I'm going to lead us today. And it's really just an opportunity. I always like it for myself and the guest, right? It's for us to really settle into ourselves, but really just to take a moment for all of us to get on the same page. And maybe we can find ourselves in a tall seated position. And anything that I offer is just an invitation. You're welcome to just sit in silence. You're welcome to continue working. Anything that's going to make you feel good this morning. And maybe we can start by just focusing on the natural rhythm of our breath. Our natural cadence, the natural in and the natural out. And then maybe we can move our awareness to our belly while we're doing this breath. And to help move some of our jitters to, let's make an audible exhale on our next few rounds of breath. Maybe we're breathing in through the nose and an audible exhale. Let's do one more. And maybe with our eyes continued in a soft gaze, or maybe our eyes are closed, let's do some visualization work of allowing any obligations, any deadlines, any anxiety to be removed from ourselves right now. And maybe we're imagining picking them up off our shoulders and allowing them to just drop for the moment. And when we finish today, you can pick them back up. But for this moment, we can allow ourselves to just be here. And for our last section, allowing yourself to really feel held by whatever is holding you. Maybe it's your chair, maybe it's the ground, maybe a couch, And then underneath that holding, we have the Great Mother. We have the earth, who's holding all of us right now on this call, who's holding all of us that we love so dearly. And knowing that she is a refuge for us whenever we feel groundlessness, anxiety, pain, or suffering, that she is holding all of us. And that will complete our mindfulness opportunity. Again, thank you everyone for being here this morning. And Alex, once again, hi and welcome.
How you doing, Blair?
Yeah, I'm good. Doesn't it feel good to just take a couple minutes before we start?
It always does, yes, definitely.
Yeah. So we have so much to talk about today. I feel like you have such an incredible lived experience on top of what you do with Ritual4Return. So let's talk. Let's start with you personally. Will you start with your story of your lived experience of incarceration and where this kind of journey started for you?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I want to first
Yeah.
dispel, because the way you read my bio, it sounded like, life was going really great, and that, I was in prison and I got education and I came out and became a social worker. However, that experience that you talked about earlier was an experience of torture. All the time I was incarcerated, I was being tortured. I was being tortured by the correction officers. I was being tortured by some of the prisoners because I decided to go to school. And in the group that I was associated with, that was also considered, a violation of the norms or the rituals that, I committed myself to at the time going through incarceration. So I just want to make that clear that incarceration is torture. It's not about rehabilitation. It's not about people going to school. It's torture. And the fact that I did take advantage of some of the educational programs that was available to the white inmates, it really wasn't available to the black inmates at the time that I went. Majority of inmates that did go to college and did get high school diploma were white inmates, white male inmates. So the fact that I did do that under those conditions, right, is what taught me about myself and about my resiliency in situations. So that's the education that I got out of it. It's the education that, my humanity, has resiliency. That no matter how much, the system tried to dehumanize me or to oppress my humanity, right? My humanity stood up and came out of that. So that's the part of the story that seems to come through all the time, is the heroes at the end kind of story. But it wasn't like that. It was very painful. It was very dehumanizing. I left out of there very traumatized, very ashamed of having gone through that in the community that I was in, that, I experienced the stigma and the shame of carrying a conviction. So it was a very difficult place, but it sounds like a good story when you read it, but it was very difficult for me. Early on, the earliest my memory of incarceration goes back to the school to pipeline prison experience. And the earliest memory I have is going through that experience was at the third grade. I don't really remember what happened in the first and second grade, but I do remember in the third grade, a teacher putting me in the back of the class with the other black children and telling me to stay quiet and to stay out of trouble and don't bother the other students who were white students. I was going to a segregated school in South Jamaica, Queens, New York City, and my family were, migrants from the South. So this school was, for many years was a white school, and then during the migration from the South to the North, Black children started going to these schools, and we were pretty much told to stay out of trouble and not interact with the white students. Um, and from there, I was sort of moved into a school that was back then called 600 schools. And I had noticed that the 600 schools were mostly all Black students and Hispanic students, young students. And we were also labeled as bad students, students that couldn't be taught. And they put me in the 600 school. It was located in Flushing, Queens. And from there, I was transferred to sort of I guess it was a high school. And it was in Manhattan, and it was called Piers 50. All this is true, even documented. And it was another high school 600 school, sort of for bad students, but it was pretty much all African-American males and a couple of Hispanic males as well. The thing about that is that when I finally got incarcerated in 1975, everyone that was incarcerated with me were people that I knew from the school. All these Black men, we're all from the same schools at Piers 50. Piers 50 was a school in Manhattan where they rounded up Black youth, Hispanic youth in the urban area and put them in that school because we were labeled unteachable or we were labeled violent or however those labels went. But from that, I went straight into prison. And everyone else that was in that school, where we should have been graduating from high school, we graduated into prison. And when you talked about me getting an education in prison, what prompted me to do that was I ran across an autobiography of Malcolm X. It was sort of worn and it was read a lot and some pages was missing. But in there, he mentioned about education, and he said that prison can be your place of confinement or it can be your university. It's up to you to make it what you want. And I took that to mean that if I want to learn about life and I want to learn how to be successful in life, then I need to find, myself as he found himself in education. So that's what prompted me to want to read and learn. And I started reading and learning about my history. Some of the books that I would get out of the library was the history of Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and all the heroes that became my educators. Mm. And I really didn't know how to read. I have to be honest. They gave me an examination and he said I had a third grade reading level. And I knew how to count money because I was always involved in that, but really didn't know anything about math. So in order for me to improve myself on learning how to read, I started underlining the words in those books that I didn't know, and then would look them up. Following up with El Haj Malik, his plan on how he did it, I followed that, and that's how I got involved with going to high school diploma, and then I got involved with going to Syracuse University. One thing I wanted to do when I joined Syracuse University is sort of break that mold where they were only allowing the white males to get those degrees at that time, and they weren't making that open to Black males. One of the reasons is because you would only get a quarter to go to school, but if you worked in a factory in prison, you would get like 75 cents. And so if you were poor and you didn't have any money coming from outside, the tendency and the pressure was to work in the factories because that's how you brought, your necessities if you didn't have anybody sending you any money or if you weren't wealthy. So it created the same dynamics that I had experienced in my own community growing up, and I wanted to change that. So I went and signed up for the school and got involved in that. Fast forwarding, once I got released, I wanted to also get involved in a lot of the work, the social justice work that was going on. And I got involved in it. One of my first jobs that I got was to help individuals coming out get their to get jobs and to also help them get better education and work with them on that. Also, one of when Mayor Dinkins became mayor, um, and became the mayor of New York City, he started an organization called Department of Homeless Services that was working directly with individuals who were living in the streets in the city of New York. And I wanted to join that because I knew many individuals who were coming home were finding themselves homeless and in the streets and no one to take care of them. And I knew that that was contributing to their recidivism and having to go back and take it. So I wanted to get involved to help, you know, counteract that effect by, working with individuals, helping them, get connected and integrated better into society and become productive human beings. I found that one of the problems is that the system and our society and the government was not really interested in healing trauma and undoing recidivism. So I didn't get much support, and even when I tried to advocate among officials and stuff, I was pretty much rejected and not supported in getting people into housing that wasn't associated with homeless shelters and stuff, people coming out of prison. From there, I also wanted to work with individuals coming out of prison that was experiencing severe mental health disorders associated with their incarceration. Many of them were being diagnosed as schizophrenic and being treated as if they were violent criminals and being locked up. One of the motivations for me to get a degree in social work is I went to court to represent an individual who was arrested. I wanted to represent him because to let the courts know that, he has mental health issues and that I'm working with him. But the judge told me that he didn't want to talk to me because I wasn't a social worker. And I was a counselor at the time. And I told him, well, listen, I'm working with this guy. We're going to get him together. My name is such and such. I was in prison. I told him all that. And he said that he wanted to talk to the social worker. The social worker, the organization, really didn't know how to represent this type of individual. I came to understand that social workers in New York really don't have any education to help them work with individuals coming out of prison and dealing with the trauma that they experience. For the most part, social workers have a lot of bias towards them. And I've come to learn that directly. So I try to become more of a social advocate by becoming a social worker. Because if I join social work, I can help change
Just real quick, will you give us like the decade and like the year that this was happening for you as well when you were?
Okay, this was in the 80s, 90s to the 2000s. So it was over a 30-year period that I was going through this, I call it a transformation. And finally, because of those experiences and also the experiences that I was experiencing directly, trying to become a social worker, I had to go through a moral interpretude hearing. And in doing that hearing, the investigator called me a sociopath. And he called me a sociopath because he was reading something that was written in my criminal record that I didn't even know about. And I told him I'd never been told I was a sociopath, but they were going to deny me the license because of what was written in the record. And now again, they were talking about a record that was like 30-something years old, like 1978, and we're talking 2008 when I applied for my license as a social worker. So they were using that. So, I sort of like was discouraged at that time. I really wanted to tell them to take their social work license and fly a kite with it or something, because it doesn't really help in the social justice movement if what we're telling people is that only certain individuals deserve compassion and support. That's I'm just giving you the history of how I got to Ritual4Return. In 2009, I joined the program because I was frustrated personally, and I was being triggered. I was feeling myself traumatized by the whole experience of the system, the criminal justice system, and the supposedly social service system, and how it was treating people from my community and myself as well. And so um, it just happened that an individual called me and said to me, like, look, there's this guy who says that, he's involved in rites of passage, and, you want to get involved. And I went down and checked out. His name was Dr. Kevin Bach, and he had this theory about rites of passage and rituals, and the whole idea of incarceration being a rite of passage of degradation. And when I heard that, I connected very well with it in terms of his theory, because incarceration, as many people don't know, is a whole process of a rite of passage into degradation. A rite of passage is used in societies, and it's very ancient. It's been used in a lot of societies and cultures in order to signify an individual transitioning from one stage of social identity to another. I mean, we see it a lot in a lot of cultures, marriages, funerals, we see it a lot. And Dr. Bach, his theory is that the whole process of incarceration is a public rite of passage, right? The person is first brought into the system, right? Taken through this public announcement of an indictment and a crime, and then convicted and lose status as a citizen and are labeled convicts, right? So the literature and the research that we reviewed and that I've seen says that when they return, there's no process to re-establish their social identity, right? Like there's a public announcement about this person and about what they did, right? Nothing about what was done to them, but it's all about what they did, right? And the conviction sticks. However, when they return to society, right, we're not informed, first of all, that they have returned and that they may have returned in a worse condition, because we believe that the system is rehabilitating people, but we know that it's not. So oftentimes they return in a much more traumatized state. And there's nothing to address that. There's nobody there to welcome them back. There's nobody there to say, what do you need to become, a member of the community again? How can we help you? There's nothing to engage them. What we do focus on is getting people jobs, and we focus on getting them housing, which is good, which is what people need, right? And then in terms of our emotional state, we're told to get over it and move on. But the reality of it is we don't get over it and we don't move on. So my involvement with Ritual4Return started there. As soon as I started to look into the theory that Dr. Bach was talking and started to understand what he was talking about, I myself went through a rite of passage to deal with some of the trauma and to heal from some of the trauma that I experienced. The program has helped me, and I kind of understood and believe that if it can help me, it can help a lot of other individuals who are experiencing maybe trauma of their experience. And so I actually left social work. I'm gonna be honest with you. I got fed up with social work, and I left social work, and I resigned and got involved with this work more intently. And I came on as a volunteer social worker. Technically, I'm still a volunteer because I don't get paid for the work. But I love doing it. I love what I'm doing. I love helping individuals. So far, 26 individuals have performed rites of passage and have moved on to a better life. And we're getting ready to do a men's summer rite of passage on actually tomorrow, the 23rd. We do our first what we call the breaking bread with the community, and it's our first night together as a cohort. So we'll be introducing ourselves to each other, and also we invited community members to come out to witness the making of a cohort and the art that we do.
So will you tell our audience as well, kind of like the umbrella of Ritual4Return, and then maybe if you want to share your process as well of like your transformation of this 12-week kind of program. But yeah, maybe like we'll start with like kind of an umbrella of what this cohort is, or like how people move through weeks.
All right, Ritual4Return is 12-week workshop. And in the workshop, we teach individuals how to use art techniques in order to learn how to talk about their stories, in order to learn how to express their stories in many different ways other than just verbal. Oftentimes we tell stories verbal, but we try to learn how to use art and using our body and using movement and using spoken word, drumming. We use art techniques to be able to express, some of the painful experiences that we have. We also use art because of the power of imagination and the power of creativity. We're talking about a transformational process. So we're talking about individuals changing themselves to becoming all that they see themselves as, and putting down stigma and being able to undo that kind of condition that was done to individuals through the incarceration period. And we use art to do that. I encourage everyone to go to the website if they want to see more, because I've been being here talking for hours about this stuff. And I know we don't have that much time, but it is a reentry program. It's for people who have experienced incarceration, who have lived experience. And it's a theater program that we base our modality on theater and theater techniques. One philosophy that I hold is that acting, right? Learning how to act is also learning how to be a human being. So growing as an actor is also synonymous with growing as a human being. And that's, something that, I emphasize to individuals, that we act all day, we act every day, right? And acting is something uniquely individual, and uniquely human that we do. And that, there's power in that. There's power in imagining, what we want to do or what we want to be. The power of that imagination allows us to transform ourselves and to heal ourselves. So it's sort of like what you did earlier when you settled the body. It's also like a form of transformation, going from one state to another state.
And I think when we go from one state to another state, it's silently asking ourselves, like, what is my anchor, right? Like, what really is me? If we're playing these other parts, or we're taking an aspect of ourselves and magnifying it, right? It's like, okay, when we magnify, and then when we come back, we're silently asking ourselves, like, what is our center? Or like, really, like, who am I?
And that's a process that comes out of Ritual4Return, in the fact in understanding that who am I is it's not a very simplistic answer, but it's a growth and it's a journey on learning who that person is. That's why we choose a rite of passage, because it's about the journey. It's not about finding the answer, but taking the journey and spending time in the journey to learn all the things, because you'll learn a lot about yourself as you take this journey. It is about, getting to the core and taking the journey to get there, and to be able to, find that truth.
And I like the perspective because it's not like the work ends after the 12-week program. It's not like, oh, like, I know who I am, and then that's done, right? It's that you're fostering continual growth, right? Is that throughout this whole human journey, and you're giving your cohort tools as well, really be able to self-reflect and then be in community too.
Right. My hope is that everyone would um, be touched by the narratives and would want to join in the movement, the social justice movement to end mass incarceration. I encourage all the members that come through to if they want to, get involved. We plan to start a cohort to teach and train the modality to other individuals so that we can scale up and go into other neighborhoods. So this cohort that we're getting ready to start tomorrow is several individuals, it's 7 individuals who have committed themselves to wanting to be involved in the community, who want to be facilitators of other rites of passage. So it's we our philosophy is those closest to the problem are also closest to the solution, and we hold to that. And so this cohort are individuals we hoping will learn the process and be able to guide others who are coming out.
Amazing.
As you know, mass incarceration is a serious problem in our society, and it's something that we can eradicate if coming together. Our goal is to do away with this type of treatment, this dehumanization of human beings to punish them, right? We find that it doesn't work, that it actually contributes to unsafe communities. It actually contributes to poverty. It contributes to violence. It contributes to crime. So this is a system that we can get rid of and put something in its place.
We talk about that here too at Prison Yoga Project, right? We're like, one day we hope to not exist, right? But it's like, in the meantime, there are people that need to be healed and supported. And so I really like having you on our show today as well, is because you are supporting the reentry aspect. What we do a lot is supporting the incarceration. And then there's people that are also doing like preventative work or like school to prison pipeline, like you were talking about, right? So it's like, so one thing that I want to do as part of the community engagement person with Prison Yoga Project is starting to really bring a lot of us together, right? People that are working in these transformative justice communities and organizations to be like, okay, and even just to be together in community, knowing that we're supporting individuals and families, right? Yeah, and just to exchange these stories. So yeah, again, thank you for being here. And I love Ritual4Return. I love everything that you're doing. And I love hearing that you're going to be training more people to hold this space as well. I think it's really important. And I want to talk to you about bringing maybe some things over to the West Coast as well. Maybe.
And it's not actually, we've actually already, one of the graduates of the program, her name is Lizette Baminga. She did a women's cohort back in May. It was very quiet. A lot of people didn't know that it was going on. We didn't do enough of public relations about it. But one of our graduates did that. Another one of our graduates, Bruce Blake, is actually the facilitator of the cohort tomorrow and has been rehearsing. And I've been sort of rehearsing with him. And I'm just blown away about him. I mean, you can watch, you can go on the website and see his rite of passage. He put his whole website on the rite of passage. He's been very honest with us, and he, showed us a lot and let us into his life. And he's going to be leading this next cohort in Harlem. So, we're scaling up. We're doing this with probably, I think we got $2,000 in the bank. Maybe less.
Work.
Maybe less. Well, we use what we have, right?
Yeah.
We use what we have. So, yeah. So if anybody want to support the process, support the program, you're welcome.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I want to get into as well. So I'm going to drop a GoFundMe link. There's always so many ways that we can support, right? So it's like, one, actually giving money is energy, and that supports your organization. And every dollar counts. So however, if anyone can contribute, we want to support you in that way. If you can't financially support, what you can do is you can share it on your socials, right? You can tell other people about it. You can tell other organizations, word of mouth. There's always so many different ways that you can.
If anybody knows Van Jones, he said he's just gotten $100 million and he wants to support programs that help people who were incarcerated.
Okay, so if there's
just saying, like,
right, great. Okay, so if people are really active on Twitter, it's not my platform, but maybe we can create some noise on Twitter.
If anybody know him personally, give him a call.
Just send them a little message. So I want to give people of our audience a little bit more insight into these specific rituals or artistic programming that you offer.
Mm-hmm.
So would you want to talk about your experience through the program and kind of?
Let me just say this. Ritual4Return wasn't my first rite of passage. I went through a rite of passage to join a gang. I joined the gang in my neighborhood, and that was a rite of passage in that I had to commit a crime and commit a robbery and bring the money back and give it to the leaders, and then I was officially in the gang. Part of that process was I also get a gun, right? If the money was $25 or more. So I kind of understood the power of rites of passage. I kind of understood that the gang that I joined in South Jamaica, Queens, was probably the biggest gang in Queens. Also one of probably the most notorious and violent gangs, also involved in drug deals and a lot of other stuff. NYPD targeted them, and every one of them were rounded up and incarcerated at some point. I understood, and the only reason I bring that up is because I understood the power of a rite of passage. And that was also a rite of passage into social degradation. And I kind of understood that. And I said to myself, what if rite of passage was used for social elevation? What if we can turn that process around? And so that's one of the reasons why I joined, because I wanted it to be a process of social elevation. I thought it was missing when Dr. Bott was explaining his theory. I thought that, his cultural background really didn't give him much insight into the population he was trying to work with. And so, I felt I brought that to the table. Like, look, we can do rites of passage with the community. However, there's also other rites of passages that are going on at the same time that, sort of works against what we're trying to do. So I realized that I had to go through it. I had to represent it. I had to embody the process myself. So my process wasn't so much about society's rejection. It was my family's rejection that I dealt with in my rite of passage. In other words, when I got incarcerated, as you know, incarceration separates family members. And because I come from a family that was poor, it was difficult for them to travel all the way up to, almost up there by Canada somewhere. It was very difficult. My mother was elderly. It was very difficult for her to get up there. My brothers were also, because they were like former members of Black Panthers and stuff, they didn't want to come into nobody's prison, thinking that they would get out, which I thought was Dutch, but they weren't trying to get there either. So there was some issues with, me coming out, and in the community that I come from, there were some issues that I felt that I needed to address, directly, and I used that to invite them in to my rite of passage so that they can see my process. Many of them didn't know that I got my high school diploma. They didn't know I had got a bachelor's degree. It wasn't something at that time that was made. The community was aware that I was coming out like that. Like I said, most of the individuals were getting degrees were white males in prison. It wasn't really Black males coming out with degrees. So I brought them in so that I could tell that story. I can tell the story about making amends and wanting to make amends to my community. And when I say my community, I'm talking about the community I come from, my family, my friends, people who have supported me growing up. That community, right? I wanted to make amends to them, and I also wanted to go back to that community to show them that I'm here to help, and that I want to be a part of the community as a productive member. So I invited all them people in to see me perform, and it changed everything for me. It changed everything for them. They got to hear the story that they didn't hear about the incarceration that I went through and experienced. They didn't know. They got to hear the story about the triumph that I had over it, those experiences, and how I changed my life. So, yeah, that was the rituals that I used to transform that experience. I don't know if that's something. Um, I don't know. I thought that it made a difference in my life and in the life of my community.
We talk a lot in medicine work that for ceremony, for healing, we need to be witnessed.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. That's what we do too. You need a witness. So we don't call people audiences. We don't call what we do theater because it's life. It's not a play. It's about real life. And witnesses, we call our audience witnesses because they're there to witness. So the first, like tomorrow night, we invited family members and community members and supporters to come in to see the first day and to meet participants. And they'll be the same people that'll come back in 12 weeks to see, the rite of passage and also see where their money is going. But to see a rite of passage, I just have to say that, you'll get to see, you'll get to see drums, handmade African drums that cost money. You'll get to see performance. You get to see time. The individuals that go through our program, they get a stipend because oftentimes they have to, buy. They come from work and then they got to pay a train fare, and so we give them stipends, $500 stipends to go through the program and to support them while they're going through it. Oftentimes, individuals in our program are just coming home, so they don't have, the monies and stuff to travel. So we provide them that. We also provide food. I'm a licensed social worker as well as my colleague, Annette Burrow, who's a licensed social worker. So we also provide therapeutic services for individuals to help them deal with some of the emotional problems and reintegrating back into families. We get in touch with families, we work with families, and we do it for free. We don't charge them anything.
It's so supportive. That's what I really like, that you really create an incredible container for the cohort, right? That all of these aspects are being held, right? You have like some financial, you have tools, you have therapy, you have community, you have food, right? Like you're really creating a solid container, which is incredible.
The goal is, like I said, is to, like you said, that make these programs unnecessary. Actually, I'm working to eliminate myself. So the goal is actually so people don't have to, have to come to a program to heal from an incarceration experience. It's just so counterproductive in every aspect. We're wasting our money. I would like to tell people in society, you're wasting your taxpayers' money, and that incarceration does not rehabilitate. New York State Department of Correctional Service gave up the idea of rehabilitation a long time ago. It's just punishment and that's it. And when people are released, it's more punishment, more control put on people, especially here in New York City. And it just contributes to crime and recidivism. And we really, as a community of people, should be interested in doing something about that because it can be changed.
So I kind of want to end with what we can do as a community, or what our obligations are as a social society. but I kind of want to bring it back just real quick to Ritual4Return. Just sharing a few more of the expressive arts modalities that the cohort goes through. So I know that you said you do theater, but you've shared with me before of a couple other rituals or like artistic experience.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
We were very expressive in terms of art. Tonight we're going to show the community our making of the mass ceremony. We're also going to share with the community our spoken word individuals. We have some individuals who are very gifted in spoken word, so the community will get to hear some new material that the individuals created for this night. Um, so that it's also participatory in the sense that the community can get involved. We do a lot of drumming to bring the community involved. We ask the community to bring instruments, whatever instrument you can play, or you thought you can play, or you think you can play, whatever instrument, bring it in, and we make music that way, and we choreograph it to it becomes a part of the process. So our program is very participatory. It involves the community, bringing the community back, because one of the things that mass incarceration does, it don't just impact people who are incarcerated, it impacts all of us. Dehumanization is a condition that is impacting all of us. It is a disease that is in our community. It has been in our community for years. And oftentimes we just completely ignore it. So yeah, I hope I covered everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much more, right? And I know that we talked about
Yeah, go to the website. Listen, go to the website and come up with your own understanding. That's what I always say. There's a lot of material. There's a lot of written material, our theories, our values, our mission statement, our work over the years. There are videos and there's pictures of our work over the years of people talking about going through the program. There's a lot of stuff on the website that can help explain it. And then get in touch with us. Let us know if you want to get involved in the process, if you have incarceration experience and you want to get involved. Leadership, if you want to be a leader, just come and join us, because the mass incarceration is a very powerful system. But what I find that what is even more powerful is the amount of individuals in our society impacted by incarceration, including families and communities. So that's why I say that we have the power to change what's going on. And if we're talking about safe streets, if we're talking about people coming home, healthy, mature, ready to be productive, then we really need to look at what's going on, because that's not what's being done inside there. I mean, there's a lot of organizations out there that's saying this, so let's do something about it.
Yeah, and for people healing trauma, right? So we have a highly traumatized population that's being isolated, causing further trauma while they're being isolated and then coming out, right? And it's like on top of the societal, racial inequity.
Right. I was going to say exactly that. On top of that, you have white supremacy. Just impacting this process, which is really what mass incarceration is about. It's not about rehabilitation. It's not about helping people become better citizens. It never was about that, right? It's the perpetuation and the furtherance of white supremacy and slavery that started in this country hundreds of years ago. It's about perpetuating that same system. And, as a democratic society, we can change it.
And just that it's the same narrative, it's the same book with just a different cover. Is kind of visualization, right? And I'm sure everyone in our community has seen 13th, but if you haven't seen that movie, they just do a really clear and incredible job of telling the story of slavery to incarceration, mass incarceration.
Mass incarceration, right?
Yep. Yeah. So kind of maybe for our last question for you and I, and then we'll open it to our audience is, we talked about joining this organization, but what do you feel like advice is for, people, part of our global community of how we can support ending mass incarceration and or just supporting healing from trauma?
I mean, let's just keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
We can support it by telling a different narrative. We can support it by listening to the narratives that are coming out, um, and being moved by that. I truly believe that the more people who are touched by these narratives will make it more difficult for politicians and policymakers to continue with that simplistic binary type of narrative about people who have been incarcerated, about this whole system of mass incarceration. So I'm just saying that, besides resources, because this effort takes resources. It takes intellectual resources. It takes financial resources, right? Besides that, you can also, start to change that narrative, start to educate the people around you, when you hear it. And also if you have the time and the motivation to join in organizations, join organizations. We can always use volunteers. I mean, we have Ritual4Return. Everybody in Ritual4Return is a volunteer because nobody gets paid. I'm trying to change that because we have some very talented people, that, being pulled away, by, organizations that have big budgets and that, want this talent. But, like, we need to do something in that regards too. But listen, people can, I want people to be moved. I want people to hear the narratives and get moved by that, because that sustains them, because this is not easy work, right? You gotta have, like, the compassion and the passion to do this work, to sustain it. I've seen people get burnt out. I've seen social workers getting burnt out trying to, do this kind of work and get frustrated and take it out on the individuals that are coming for service. I mean, it's not nothing new. I mean, we hear these stories all the time. However, what I'm saying is listen to the stories sometimes. I mean, that to hear and to tell an individual, like, yeah, I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you. You didn't do it to me directly, but I forgive you. So that's a healing process in and of itself. That's what helped me. My brother didn't come to my rite of passage, but part of it dealt with him. But someone in the audience stood up. We asked, would somebody stand up and stand in my brother's place? And somebody in the audience stood up. This brother, and me and him are still friends today. He stood up in my brother's place because he was moved by the narrative. I didn't know him, he didn't know me, but the narrative moved him. So I'm hoping that, if I said something here today that may help move somebody. I'm not a preacher, but I would like people to hear these narratives, pay attention to them. You can see some of them on the website. If you go to the website, we're trying to put all the narratives on the website so that you can hear these narratives. And, like, all these people couldn't be wrong about, being tortured because they were arrested for possession of crack cocaine. I did time for possession of marijuana.
Mm.
2003, I got out from doing 5 to 15 for possession of marijuana. I'm not lying to you, for possession of marijuana.
I don't know if I can even begin to understand the frustration of now seeing that it's like, I mean, like, of course, cannabis should have been legalized a very long time ago at a federal level, right? And it shouldn't have ever been criminalized. But to now see, like, it's everyone's walking around, especially LA, right? Just like smoking a joint, no problem. And that we still have people that are.
I remember having checking the boxes and all that stuff and feeling so humiliated, like, come on, man. I told I can't get a job. I'm like, come on, man. It's marijuana. This is trees. It grows in the ground.
it's a healing plant, like a deeply healing plant, right? And that
I'm just saying that
backwards.
this is Department of Correctional Services, and this is how it deals with Black and brown people. This is how to deal with them. Just because you came in there, it had nothing to do with what I got charged. I could have got charged with murder. In 1978, I was charged with murder, right? And forced to cop out to a crime that I didn't commit. But they told me if I didn't, I'll get 25 to life. And if I admit to it, I would only get 0 to 15. My lawyer said, and that means if you be good for 1 year, they can let you out. It took 8 years and being good for 8 years before they considered even letting me back out. But the point that I'm making is I got 0 to 15 being charged with manslaughter in 1978. And in 1997, right, I got arrested for possession of marijuana and got 5 to 15, meaning the minimum I could have did is 5, I had to do was 5 years. I could do less if I had manslaughter. I only had to do 1 year doing good. I have to admit I wasn't being good. But I was told that if I be good for 1 year, I would be released, right? And here, when I went to court, they offered me a 2 to 6, and I refused. I said, I'm not copping out to anything ever again. They did that to me one time before. I'm not going to do that. So they tried me and gave me 5 to 15. I got more time for possession of marijuana than I did for manslaughter. You see what I'm saying? So this is the type of system that we're dealing with. It has nothing to do with crime. It has nothing to do with reducing crime or none of that. It is the perpetuation of that same system, that, been going on. So I'm just saying that, and if you look at the website, I'm not the only one saying that. You have, several other individuals saying that the crimes that they were convicted of today is normal in society. And they were forced to do time. They were forced to live with the stigma, shame, guilt for many years. And, and for a lot of them, they didn't were able to pull themselves out of it because of, the trauma became overwhelming. And a lot of them just repeatedly started, drug use. You want to medicate that stuff. They keep trying to medicate it, the feelings. But, and that kept leading to more and more incarcerations. One of the gentlemen on our website did 8 years for one possession. He got caught with possession of crack and wound up doing 8 years because his parole officer kept violating him every time his urine was dirty for crack cocaine. $5 thing of crack, he has to do another 90 days. The state has to pay $60,000, $80,000 to house him for one vial of crack. And he wound up doing 8 years repeatedly, and he talks about it on the website. So I want people to hear these types of narratives and make decisions that, look, this is out of hand. This is some of the reasons why recidivism and crime continues. It's because of, our policies and our belief systems, have to be changed. I hope my P is passionate enough for individuals to understand and get involved. Don't take money. I ain't got no money. I'm involved. I get Social Security. My wife is in the background saying, I wish you stopped saying that.
What's your wife's name?
Her name is Annette Goodman. She's a social worker for the Administration of Children's Services. She's been a social worker for like 30 years. And I told her I fell in love with her because I was in love with social work. But when I left social work, I said, I don't know, we may have to separate. No, that's not right. That's not true. I don't want to be known as a lover of social workers.
I love that both of you are in service, right? Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's heavily involved. She keeps me focused and grounded, and I really appreciate her involvement in it. I mean, it's time. It's a movement time. So you need to do this work.
Yeah.
All right, let's open it up to the community.
You're taking the words out of my mouth. Exactly. So at this time, we're going to invite our community, anyone that is in the Zoom room, on the bar of your window, there's an opportunity. There's a Q&A box. You're also like welcome to put it in the chat, but we can keep it a little bit more organized for this Q&A box. You can drop any questions that you have for Alex into this box. Anything about Ritual4Return, anything about his process, anything about his life, maybe where he wants to be in the next years, you know, any question, you're welcome to drop it in the box, and then I'll say it, and we'll involve the community. So anything at this time, you're welcome to drop in here, and I can always keep asking more questions too. And let's see, I'll check Facebook too. You know what? And while we have people maybe getting ready to ask questions, Alex, will you talk to us about the mask making ritual that you do?
Yes, we do mask making, and the mask. The process. I mean, to see it actually being done, they would have to go to the website, and Bruce does a very good job of explaining as he's putting on the mask. He talks about putting these bandages on his face and head, because he said that the wounds that he was covering is the stigma and the name callings that he had endured growing up, and he used these, the plaster of Paris strips, and he used it as bandages to cover it up. And then at the end of it, he asks the question, how does this look? It doesn't look nice. And if you see me in the street, would you want me to wear this? And he said, I guess not. So stop stigmatizing me. So Bruce used his mask, and in the understanding of something James Bowen said one time, that we all live in a mask because we are afraid to take it off, and at the same time, we know that we can't live in it. And so Bruce used his mask as a part of his transformation, to say that, he was taking off the mask, that he's not a convict, that he's not a drug addict, that he's not crazy, all these labels that were put on him. And he took it off to say that. So the mask can represent anything that you feel that you may feel may be a hindrance to you, or maybe something that the world doesn't know about you, and you want them to know, and that the mask was keeping it covered, and you wanted to take it off to show the world something about yourself. It can represent that. It can represent, like I said, the stigma and trauma that you've been experiencing. And we use the mask throughout the education and the class to the very end. And then in that threshold crossing, they take it off and put it down, to step into their new identity that they've been working on in the 12 weeks. So I created a mask, and my mask was also a mask of shame, and I wanted to take it off. And so during the process, with the witnesses, I was able to put it down, and literally put it down emotionally as well. And that's what we use the mask for. And that's pretty much what it's used for in theater. The masks that we use in theater is that. That's one of the rituals. We do a couple other rituals where individuals may want to write some things that they want forgiveness for, and we write it on some rice paper, and we put it in a bowl. Nobody reads it, and we pour water on it so that it can dissolve. And and we, like I said, we have a pastor now that we call our pastor, and it's his job to take that bowl and to pray, and so that we can receive things that we're asking for from our spiritual mother and father or whatever God of your choice that you're asking for, you write it on that paper, and the pastor will pray for it. So that's another ritual that we do. And then, it's the ritual too of bonding and the cohort. You committed to that cohort. Whatever you go through with that cohort. Whatever you need help, you call members of that cohort with you. So it becomes like, sorority, fraternity type brotherhood, but much, much closer because we have the process that we go through together.
Mm.
I don't know if I'm making myself.
You're making yourself clear. Absolutely. And I like bringing the elements in as well. I hosted a healing retreat recently, and we had an opportunity to work with like a traditional Russian banya. And so he did a ceremony with us, and he was speaking. So within the water turns into steam, right? And so
okay.
right? So the water turns into steam. And so the prayer that he was saying, or the space that he was kind of opening us up in, was that every molecule of water that is on this planet has been on this planet since the origin, before time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like water is like our biggest timekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And it holds all the narratives and all the stories, right? And so I really love this ritual of like asking for forgiveness to and giving it to the water, right? As water as a timekeeper, or water as a container. So
right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. We got some questions.
Yeah. So
Adina.
Yeah, let's start with Adina. So besides education, what tools do you use to psychologically survive incarceration? So while you were incarcerated, were there any tools that supported you for your mental and emotional health?
Dina, I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes, we turn it off. In that, because like I said, it's torture. To be in a cell, to put a human being in a cell is torture. So psychologically, for a long time, I was actually turned off. I went to a space that I just shut down, and it took me a couple of years after coming home to be able to, open back up again. But psychologically, I had shut down. Education became, for me, my way to escape. At times when there were, some quiet, and I can read a book or something that would allow me to go into that book and go to that place or go to the experience. So education became a big escape for me. But other than that, emotionally and psychologically, I think a lot of people just shut down. Some people just have a break from reality often. That happens a lot. I've seen it. Individuals just become an altered state, if you want to call it that. But it's torture. It was torture. And I spent 9 months in isolation and segregation. Because I continued to smoke marijuana in prison. So they said they had enough of me. They put me in segregation. I know I'm laughing at it now, but
we can laugh.
I'm laughing at the whole idea of like you could buy marijuana in prison, like it's and let they put me in the box.
And that's what like brought you there, and then you still were smoking in there, right? Like there is cosmic comedy.
Yeah.
Although it's full of suffering too.
Yeah, all the suffering and stuff. So I hope I can. I wish I can say that there was some other type of way where I could have felt better, to think better, and to feel better about my situation, but there wasn't. It was even when I was going to school to get a bachelor's degree, there wasn't much hope that I would come home and get a job with it. I just did it because, I wanted to live up to what Malcolm X said. I wanted to make amends to him. I wanted to make amends to Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and all of them for being like the knucklehead that I was acting like and not being a leader and following their example for my people. And getting in this struggle and being, all of that. I saw myself as, I owed them a lot. So I guess, one of the things is that, I kept going forward because I didn't want to, I wanted to um, be an example and to show respect to those individuals that came before me and to pick up from where they left off. I thought it was I started to believe after I read what they were saying that, wait a minute, what am I doing? Right? So that was the escape. So when I say education, it wasn't education in the sense of see spot run spot run. They gave me books like that, but I threw them away. It was education in the sense of the struggle and of the movement that I'm a part of, the historical movement that I'm a part of, that I was born to be a part of, and to play a role in it. I'm not in this world just to be in it. I was put in this world to play a role in that struggle, and so, I felt I had to get myself together.
I feel like I hear it that it was a unembodied leadership journey for you, where you were like,
right,
yeah, you were.
I'm being honest. Those people, when I was in isolation, those people were my mentors in there. Even though, and I have to say this, even though officers came in and beat me a lot, right? They came in, they would come in my cell and beat me and then leave because they would get so tired because I would fight back. They would get so tired that they couldn't get me down. They would leave and then they'll come back the next day. But in that, those people became, Harriet and all of them became, my mentors, my liberators. And, I saw myself coming out of there. Like they were going to get me out. The Underground Railroad was going to come and get me. And I said, well, I'm getting ready for that. I'm getting ready for liberation. So that's what, kept me. There were other individuals incarcerated, other Black Panther, Black Liberation Army members. There was the Weathermen. There were other individuals in there that I started to associate with. And that camaraderie is also what sustained me, with their camaraderie and their guidance and their knowledge. I found solace also in the Bible. I followed the story of Jesus all the way through from beginning to end. And to me, he was a revolutionary and a lover of humanity. And he gave his life. And I thought that was a good example too for me to follow, to be a lover of humanity and struggle for liberation for people. So I guess that's the education. And many others, Mahatma Gandhi, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. I can name many of them. They became my inspiration. And that's what sustained me. That's what keeps me out here and keeps me going.
Thank you. And thank you, Adina, for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
And a question from Andrea too. So about the rituals through Ritual4Return. So these rituals sound.
What are some of the daily questions? Oh, well, I run for therapy. Running is my therapy. I also, I do a lot of meditation. I'm not as good as you, Blair, but I do meditation. I get up early in the morning, and I love early in the morning to start my rituals of connecting with myself, connecting with my spiritual self. Like I said, I exercise daily. I try to keep the body healthy. And that's a lot of things we don't realize. A lot of times we spend a lot of time up here in our head, but the body needs also to be healthy because our body is where the trauma is. People think the trauma is in your head. The trauma is in your body. Trauma is done to your body. Your body remembers trauma. So your body, like they say, sometimes only has 3 ways of dealing with trauma, and that's fight, flight, or freeze. It ain't trying to rationalize. When your body's triggered, it ain't trying to rationalize. So I take care of my body because I can be triggered easily. and I don't want to be in that space, but the body needs to be brought in that space too. Like, mindfulness practices is not just mindful; it's about the body as well. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time doing that, and I appreciate that question because, I also work with the individuals in the program, and I encourage them too, to spend a lot of time with that because a lot of times, like you said earlier, Blake, it's in the gut. A lot of times it's just right there in the gut, and if you take care of what you put in there, it would help you feel better, move better, think better, and everything. And I don't know if you ever been full on food, you know? I can't think.
Mm-mm.
And especially my wife convinced me to eat some White Castle burgers with her the other day. And, and that was the worst. I just want to say I learned a lot there. Watch what you put in your stomach because it took a couple of days for me to think again.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when we start to bring our awareness to how food or how entertainment, how everything really affects us, right? And just starting to see more of these subtle cues. And you're just like, oh my
Right,
God.
right.
And even like, I was a bartender for almost 2 decades, really. So like 15 years and transitioning out of that. And, I'm bartending, I'm gonna drink, and as the older that I got, I saw, I'm like, oh man, these are 2-day hangovers now. And how it's just how it ends up being this cycle, right? You're like, okay, you don't feel good and you eat bad food or you eat fatty food to feel better, and you're just like, okay, you know what, these old ways really just aren't working.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, you're like, oh, okay, like when I do mindfulness practices or when I do these things, I feel better. So I want to just keep feeling better. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oftentimes when we talk about rituals, prison creates rituals in a lot of ways. I have a friend that a couple of months ago he asked me to do I want to eat some Jack Mac. That's some stuff they make in prison, right? And it's a meal that they use canned fish and they put crackers with it, and then they put it in oil and fry it like it's chicken. And then some people even say it tastes like chicken, right? They grind up these crackers and make that the batter. And I said, yo, man, you still eating Jack Mac? And he said, yeah, what's wrong with that? I said, but that's prison food. He said, yeah, but what's wrong with it? And I thought about it. And I said, you see how these rituals stay with us. Poor food, like that's one of the things that they do, and they give you poor food, poor nutritionist food to help further destroy your humanity by giving you this poor food, right? So you can't learn, you can't think, you can't, rationalize, you can't figure nothing out. You're always angry, you're always violent, and that's because of the food that they constantly feed. And here's my friend, like he's still making this stuff. I just thought it was a funny that he brought that ritual out with him. And I said to myself, that's my goal, is to undo these unhealthy rituals that we carry with us.
Yeah.
It ain't about just doing away with mass incarceration because you're going to do away. But if you have it, if you embody it, if you have it in you, we got to work to undo that stuff too. And you talked about the trauma. That's how I identify trauma. It's through those rituals that people have. I see them. Sometimes I'm on the subway and I see guys and I say to myself, he did time. I can tell by the way he's moving. Mm. And I met a guy in the gym and I saw him exercise and I went over to him. I said, I'm not trying to get in your business, but you did time, right? And he said, yeah. I said, I can tell by the way you exercise that you did time. We bring out these rituals and we're not even aware of that we have them with us and that people in society can also pick up on it sometimes the way you can, and they want to distance themselves because somehow, that's the stigma. So I'm just saying that, rituals, have to be worked on every day. And like I said, I get up in the morning, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning. Gotta have coffee first. That's part of the ritual. I have coffee first. is not healthy, but I got to do something. I have coffee first, but after that, I go take care of myself first before I even do the work. Before I even start to do the work, I take care of myself first because I feel I can be a better support for the community. And like I said, I've been meeting with these brothers for like the last 6 weeks. We've been meeting to prepare for this rite of passage, and I got to meet their families. I got to meet, you know, their children, and one brother has a grandchild. And got to meet these wonderful people, these amazing people, and and I talk about the food and the health and staying healthy and being a part of this and this whole process. So
We have two more questions. I want to get to them. So I'll read Phoenix's out loud. Phoenix, I'm creating a nonprofit holistic halfway house. We want to incorporate music, art, yoga, meditation, after food, shelter, clothing, and finding employment. What other suggestions do you have for practical support that is needed for people recently released from prison? So just looking like, what are some practical things that individuals need for their reentry?
When you talk about practical support, though, they definitely can use a peer group. They can definitely use, and I would suggest that above they could have a peer group where they can come and meet with other individuals, because that's something that helps individuals survive, even incarcerated, is camaraderie with other individuals that are in the same situation. That helps them survive. So I would recommend that you would also do a peer group and let them do the peer group. Don't try to bring in professionals, but let them form a peer group. I can also come, if you're in New York area, we can come and sort of do a rite of passage right there in your space. We do a lot of connecting rituals where individuals learn to in theater. There's a lot of touching and stuff like that to help individuals connect, and we do a lot of connecting types of exercises where we work together. So I found that me associating with individuals is what keeps me going. I meet so many people that want to get involved in the program, and then we become friends. So that, and every time somebody comes out, it's like I'm coming out with them. So it's like always starting again. Like, okay, here we go again. Let's start again. So it's always a renewal for me. It's always refreshing for the individual to have somebody meet them when they come out. Most of the people that go through our program say the whole idea of being welcomed home and being welcomed and welcome and not being ignored is very powerful, and was very powerful for them to be celebrated and to be looked upon as, welcome home. We glad you came. Come on in. And then like, here's a job, here's an apartment, here's keys. Come on into this community. You're a part of this community now. And I'm not talking about the bigger community, but you're a part of this community. You got people you can connect with, you can hang out with. You got people that's going to tell you about yourself.
We missed you. We're happy you're here.
All right, so that's one question. Let's do the other one.
Yeah, and then the other one. So from Howell, where do you connect with folks who join your cohorts? How do you get the word out? And are you open to accepting participants from any location?
Yeah, during the pandemic, we were doing virtual rites of passage, and we created a virtual community. There are some people upstate New York that went through it virtually, so we created a virtual community. We stay connected by Zoom and phone calls. Yeah, we also have some workshops on the tablets. I don't know if tablets are something that they use other places, but in New York, they have these tablets that they give out to people that are incarcerated, these education, they can find programs and art programs and educational programs on these tablets. It's a secured internet. It's like an intranet, not an internet, so it's secure. So we have workshops that we put on these tablets as well about Ritual4Return. So we reach out to people. These tablets are going to go to like 40 other jurisdictions around the country. So I'm hoping to be able to connect with people through Zoom, use this technology, and do rites of passage with people in their homes. We can do it in our home. You can watch Bruce. Bruce did his whole rite of passage virtual. Um, so we can meet if you can call or reach out. My contact information is on the website, I think, or Blair give it to you.
Yep, I'll give it to you too. I'm gonna drop the website again. I'm gonna drop the GoFundMe link again, and then I just want to read these 2 comments to you, Alex, because sometimes I think it's really nice to have them said out loud to you. So we have some nice words for you as well. Mary wrote, "I don't have a question yet. I'll be learning more about your program from your website, but I do want to say thank you to both of you for this presentation today, and thank you so much for what you do. I hope to be able to contribute someday when I'm in a better position to do so. Peace and blessings to all. Keep on shining your light, your beautiful light, beautiful ones." So that was really sweet. And then from Howell, who had asked that last question, Alex, "It's so inspiring to hear you speak about healing the way that you do. It's so inspirational knowing that you're helping build back confidence, self-esteem, and creating space for forgiveness. It's all about valuing the self and each other as humans. Thank you for what you're doing, and I will be promoting it." So I second.
Oh man, that's great. Thank you both. That's great.
Yeah. So Alex, thank you so much for making time today. I know that, you're like 24 hours before your next cohort starts.
Oh man.
Really, thank you for being here with us today. I just am so in love with Ritual4Return, and I just want the most success and just an expansion for you, just to be able to be supported in the work that you're doing, and for it to support so many communities. So thank you.
We're going to record the event tomorrow, so I'll send you a copy of that recording. We're going to record, and we're going to record most of our stuff because we want to get it out there. So okay. I'll keep you informed.
Good. Keep us informed. I posted a little blog post about the conversation that you and I had from our previous meeting on our website. And so anything that you send over to, or any of the videos, I'll keep it posted on our blog, and maybe we'll have you back after this cohort's finished too.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely going to reach out to you, and maybe we can show some clippings of it and talk to people about it.
Yeah, we would love to have a little recap or a little performance, and be further witnesses, right? To
yeah. Thank you so much, Blair. I really appreciate. Bill, I don't know if you were there, but he's still there.
He might be in a meeting in this moment, but I know that he absolutely sends his love.
And how, if you reach out to me, we can talk more if you want to get involved in something. Everybody else too. If you reach out, Blair, give you my information. And thank you so much for this, Blair. This is my first webinar. Maybe I'll get better. I don't know.
Oh, Alex,
I don't know.
I don't think you need to be anywhere else. I think that your storytelling and your life and everything that you're doing is absolutely perfect. Chef's kiss. So this was great. Thank you so much. It has been.
Thank you for this opportunity, Blair.
Yeah. No, thank you for saying yes. Really, just I found out about Ritual4Return about 2 years ago. I saw that the founder had won a grant from the Roots of Grass.
Yeah. Blades of Grass.
Blades of Grass. And so I remember being just like pulled to my computer, hearing about you guys. And so I've been thinking about you since. So it is really awesome to have you here today. Yeah. And thank you to our audience.
We've grown from then. We've done a lot of work. The founder is writing a book about the experience. He stepped down and said, "Y'all do your thing. You did enough." So he's writing a book now about his experience. So we hope to see that. But again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and we're around. If you know anybody, let them know about us. like I said, we're scaling up. So I got some great individuals that we're training right now. And we want to send them out to plant seeds in other communities.
And you guys can share the interview today on Facebook. You'll be able to share that immediately, and then we'll have a recording up as well. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Alex. I'm going to try to figure out how to stop the recording here on this end, but sending so much love. I'm so excited that your cohort is starting tomorrow and some in-person programming. So again, thank you so much for being here, Alex.
Take care.
We'll connect again soon. Bye.
All right. Bye.